A member of the world's most famous family took a ride on the Staten Island ferry and threw her support behind one of the borough's esteemed cultural institutions, and the Staten Island Advance was on the scene with the exclusive.
Easter application will remain important. The story that goes with lighthouses and how we got here is just as important. And your museum has made an astonishing impact in telling that story.
So she goes person to person, put her hand out, shaking every single person's hand, making conversation with them, laughing a little bit. It was like, I think that is what put everyone also at ease, because there's this very intelligent, proper person who is just so important. And having her be so personable really did. It's like breath out.
Welcome to the Staten Island Advances from the Scene, a podcast bringing you an inside look at the biggest stories on Staten Island with the reporters who cover them. I'm your host, Eric Bascom, and this week I'm joined by Staten Island Advance reporter and social media specialist Lauren Lavallo to discuss her exclusive story on Princess Anne of the British royal family visiting Staten Island's National Lighthouse Museum. Thanks for joining me today, Lauren. I've been trying to figure out ways to get you back on the podcast recently, and this seemed like the perfect story for it. So, the first time that we had you on, you were talking about kind of adjusting to your new role on the social media team. So I was just kind of curious how that's been going for you and if you're feeling a little bit more comfortable now.
Yeah, totally. First of all, thanks for having me. This is great. I can't wait to talk about Princess Anne's visit. Social media has been going pretty all right. Having a good time. It's always fun interacting with the people of Staten Island. Facebook and Instagram, and we're doing TikTok, and we're trying to grow our audience still. So it's been a good time though. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
I'm glad. So, I have you on today to talk about Princess Anne visiting Staten Island. But before we kind of dig into the story, for those of us who aren't exactly familiar with the royal family, can you tell us a little bit about who Princess Anne is? Because to be honest with you, I honestly did not know until I read your story.
Princess Anne is the second child of the late Queen Elizabeth, and she's her only daughter. And she actually has this title called Princess Royal, which is bestowed or awarded to, I should say, or the eldest daughter of the reigning monarch. Now, I'm sure if somebody's listening, they're probably going to be like, no, that's not right. But what I believe it is so Princess Anne has this title. She's the only one who can hold that title at any one time.
Oh,
so,
okay.
if and when Princess William becomes king, Princess Royal will still have that, Anne will still have that title until she passes away, in which case William can bestow it upon his daughter. But yeah, so she's incredibly philanthropic. She's been involved with charities, organizations, causes for decades. And she's probably the most well-known royal in terms of how apparently nice she is. And I can now testify, she's very personable and very sweet.
That's great. And yeah, we're going to get to some of that in your experience with her. Now that we've got kind of a baseline understanding of who Anne is, let's talk about why she came to visit Staten Island. So apparently she is known as a revered champion of sorts for the international lighthouse community. Can you tell us a little bit about her previous work and then how that kind of eventually led her to Staten Island and to the National Lighthouse Museum in St. George?
Sure, yeah. So she's gotten a reputation now for being involved in helping to preserve these historic relics around the world, especially in Scotland, it being the UK. I swear to God, my grandmother had told me very recently that Princess Anne loves lighthouses, and my grandmother loves lighthouses.
My mom loves lighthouses. I'm also a big fan. We go up to Maine. Yeah. They are cool. I was cracking jokes, but they're pretty cool.
Yeah, so my grandmother happened to drop that knowledge, which to me at the time was like, okay, cool, thanks, Mama. And then imagine my surprise when it's like, now I've actually now get to learn all this. But yeah, no, so she's so passionate about them, and she actually tries to go out, apparently, as I've read about this, or about her, she tries to go out and visit as many lighthouses as she can to check out their history, maybe take a photo, and to do what she can to save them, because, the significance is behind lighthouses. They saved sailors, you know what I mean? When people would be coming in from sea, they could tell where the shore was, and they're very valuable. But as it's been pointed out, people don't think about them, right? You know what I mean? And so they're going to be lost to time, which would suck. These have been such important parts of our country, of other countries, and I guess she's just so passionate about saving history. which I can appreciate.
Yeah, and then how did that lead here? Because, I think a lot of people don't realize that the National Lighthouse Museum, like that's the name, but it is literally the National Lighthouse Museum here on Staten Island, right?
Lighthouse, yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit more about the museum and how Anne got involved, how they reached out?
Yeah, so Linda Dianto, who's the executive director of the National Lighthouse Museum, which again, national. This is like the museum for the entire country, is located in St. George, a 7-minute walk from the ferry, from the Staten Island ferry. So when Linda Dianto, who herself is a force, I mean, I have such an appreciation for this woman too, because she is credited with essentially saving the project of the National Lighthouse Museum. When she found out that Princess Anne was a fan of lighthouses, she said she spoke with the Board of Trustees and said, you know what, we should write a letter. Let's write a letter to Buckingham Palace and see what Anne says. And she admits it was like a long shot, but it turns out that she said one day, she was getting ready to take a shower and she gets this phone call from like a no caller ID. And so she's like, of course I'm not going to pick that up.
No.
Yeah. And she ends up letting the call go to voicemail. She says she gets out of the shower. She looks at her phone. There's a message from Princess Anne's private secretary and was like, oh yeah, she's into this. Let's talk a little bit. But this was back in 2019, right before the world shut down.
Right.
So Princess Anne was supposed to be coming in 2020. Obviously did not happen. She was supposed to be coming earlier this year because the reason why the National Lighthouse Museum wanted her was because they were launching this campaign. It's the campaign for illuminating future generations. They wanted her to be the honorary chair to help them launch this program. So that program launched, I believe, January 12th. She was supposed to be on Staten Island January 12th.
For the launching of the campaign.
And then a variant of COVID, kind of took New York down.
Right. As we've been familiar with recently.
God, too familiar. So they postponed it. Found out she can come, October 4th, I think. Yeah, and she was really willing to do it, which is so huge. The National Lighthouse Museum, the people behind the museum are doing such good work themselves, but without a little bit of help from people who can provide it. I mean, Princess Anne is a big figure.
Yeah.
She's a huge figure in the lighthouse community. Again, as I learned, she's a huge figure in charities and organizations. And the fact that she would want to lend her time to Staten Island for this thing, that's beyond huge. It's monumental. That's how I started my lead in the story. Monumental show of support. And my God, Linda was over the moon.
I'm sure.
Imagine like inviting a freaking royal.
And then they just show up.
Show up. They actually follow through on their word. Not because, again, this was 3 years in the making. 3 years. And she stuck to her word and was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Staten Island.
Wow. It's really commendable. And, like you were just saying, it's not every day that you get the backing of the royal family on it's kind of like a local cultural institution here. Yeah. So I'm curious what the museum officials and local electeds who are on the scene, what did they have to say about kind of the significance of Princess Anne showing the support and how that can kind of help the museum in its new campaign?
They were thrilled. I mean, it's like,
obviously,
like full stop. They were beyond thrilled. They understand, how important this moment was. The buzz in the room, because, the way that the visit went was Princess Anne, she came to the National Lighthouse Museum to check out what they're doing, what they have, their plans for the future, because there is a very bright future for this museum. And then, we rode the ferry, went to a luncheon in Manhattan. The entire time people were just buzzing and I think kind of, they just couldn't believe that this was happening. That this literal royal person was throwing her support behind something that's been so meaningful to them, that has been in the works since, like 98, I think, in 97, 98. Everyone was so grateful. And which is like really, really cool. You know what I mean? Like everyone, getting to talk with everyone and see how excited they were and how meaningful this was. It was really fantastic.
It seems like the story was kept under wraps pretty much until the day that it happened. I mean, I had no idea it was happening. I know we're not as in close contact anymore because we're not all in the newsroom on the same days or whatever, but I didn't even know that this was a thing until I saw your article pop up on the website. So I'm curious, for you, when you found out about this story, like how recently was it that you learned you were going to be covering it, and what was kind of your reaction when you found out that you had gotten the task?
Yeah. So I'll start with Her name is Danielle Mann. I believe she said she was a administrative assistant and did a lot of like special projects and events and stuff like that, coordinating. Mm-hmm. She told me when at the event, at the luncheon, they had to get the word out without getting the word out.
Right.
And they did a great job. You got to
make people send like an NDA when you give them the press advisory.
Yeah, I have no idea. So I found out either Thursday afternoon or Friday that it was a possibility of this happening.
Yeah, so less than a week.
So yes, yeah. So our boss, Gail, had come up to me. I was at my standing desk over there, and she said, "Hey, I have an assignment. You could say yes, no, if you want to take it. If this is interesting to you, just let me know." And I was like, "Okay." Like, I mean, I'm not ever going to tell her no.
I know, it's hard to say no to the bosses on those kinds of things.
Yeah, and she knows, like, I would literally do whatever she wanted anyway. So she asked me, and I was like, well, what's the assignment? She says, well, we've heard that Princess Anne could be coming to Staten Island. And at first I was like, you're like, come on. Like, that is not
pulling my leg here.
Yeah, I was like, come on. And then she's like, no, it's like true. It's, this is going to be happening, and she's going to be going to the National Lighthouse Museum. Of course, my first question is, well, why? You know what I mean? Like, I don't like, but I think it was like me being like, this is just outside of my scope.
So weird. Yeah, it's kind of like a Mad Libs of an assignment. It's like, Princess Anne will be riding the Staten Island ferry to the National Lighthouse Museum.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, she said, we don't really have very many details. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to reach out to Linda Dianto, the executive director of the museum, and ask her, what's going on? Can we come? Can we bring a photographer? See what she says. So I got her email. I emailed Linda, who's very nice, very receptive. But she did mention, we're like, no press is going to be there. So you guys can come, but like really like no press is going to be there. So like,
keep it low key.
Keep it low key, yeah, because it's also a safety thing. You know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
Having the Princess Royal come, they didn't want to get the word out prematurely in case something happened, and also again security, safety, because going from St. George and then going onto the ferry, and it was not a lockdown ferry. Like this was like a regular ferry.
I thought it was noon, right?
Yeah, it was a 12 p.m.
Yeah,
12 p.m. Sandy Ground boat. So I was talking with Linda, and the more I heard about it, I was like, this quite literally is once in a lifetime.
Absolutely.
And I could not turn this down. So Linda was able to give Jason and myself a couple of protocol to follow, and was just like, get there at this time, make sure you're bringing ID, make sure, you're dressed appropriately, because it's royalty,
right.
You know what I mean? It's not just any other assignment. In my opinion, the National Lighthouse Museum did a phenomenal job in laying everything out, the visit. Yeah, so that's kind of how it came to be. It was very quick, like, okay, you want to do this? Yes, you can do this assignment. Yes, you can be there. All right, like, buckle up, let's go.
We'll be right back. The Mayor of Maple Avenue is a powerful multi-part podcast about Sean Sinesy, a victim of former Penn State football coach Jerry Sandusky, who was arrested 10 years ago for numerous child sexual abuse charges. The podcast series is written and hosted by Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter Sarah Ganim, who takes listeners into the world of addiction rehabilitation, where society can be quick to celebrate the consequences for abusers while not addressing the needs of their victims. Subscribe now to The Mayor of Maple Avenue wherever you get your podcasts. That's awesome. And so you mentioned you and our podcast producer, right, Jason Patteron, who, in addition to his work on the podcast with us, is also a photographer and videographer for our site.
Fantastic one at
Fantastic.
That. Yeah.
I think brilliant is how we're going to go with. So you guys were able to go there to join the princess on her visit to the museum, and being the only media in attendance has got to be so cool. But I was wondering if you can just kind of paint the picture of the scene for us.
Yeah.
What was her arrival like? How did she interact with the people? What did she do while she was there?
At the actual museum, they were capped at the number of people that they could have in their building. And so when we got there, there was the captain of the Coast Guard, I believe, a bunch of politicians. We had the borough president, we have the DA, we had the board of trustees. Everyone just kind of like walking around, it's buzzing. Princess Anne comes at 11 a.m. We're all in our little spots. She's greeted by Linda, by Captain Joseph, who is the president of the National Lighthouse Museum, and then by Borough President Fasella and DA McMahon. They all kind of like chat a little bit with her. You could hear a pin drop. It was dead silent at first. Because it's like, what do you do? What do you say? You know what I mean? Like, I just was like in my little corner, like, I'm just like gonna be out of the way. But yeah, so she goes person to person, shake, you don't put your hand out. She wait for her to put her hand out. Of course, yeah. Put her hand out, shaking every single person's hand, making conversation with them, laughing a little bit. It was like, I think that is what put everyone also at ease. Yeah. Because there's this very intelligent, proper person who is just so important. Like, she really is. Like, regardless of how like people feel about like royals or whatever else, like, she is a very important figure. And having her be so personable really did. It's like breath out.
Yeah, it kind of settles things down.
Yeah, so she went around. She was shaking everybody's hand, speaking with everybody, because everyone was kind of in like a semicircle. One of the curators at the museum, Amanda, who gave her a little tour of what they have at the museum. And she kind of went around, and they had at that time a little exhibit called Lighthouses of Great Britain.
Oh, wow.
Fitting, yeah.
Appropriate.
Very appropriate. The architect behind the building of this National Lighthouse Museum on the site, in buildings 11 and 10, he was there, and he's a fantastic guy as well. He kind of gave her the rundown of where they started with the museum, what their plans are for the future, how bright the future is. And she, took that in, which is really cool. They had the historian named Wade. He gave a history of the site itself. Yeah, and then she kind of came around again, took her time meeting everyone. And we saw the itinerary. She's a very punctual person. And like, everything was timed out to the 5. Me too, yeah. Everything was timed out to the 5-minute mark. But that being said, to me, it never seemed rushed. So, we did this thing, but we had to catch that 12 p.m. boat. Mm-hmm. So probably around like 11:45, she takes her private car, because I guess one of the protocols was that she had to be the first on the boat.
That makes sense.
And then like the last off.
So that she's not loading in with the masses.
Yeah. So we walk over to the ferry boat. We get on through security onto the bottom of the boat. And then she went right up to the pilot house to kind of do it, which was incredible too, because I'm sure, as you probably read too, this was almost 65 years to the day that her parents, again, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, rode the Staten Island ferry. They rode it in I think it was like October 21st or 25th or whatever it was. This was October 4th.
Wow, that's a really cool full circle,
Yeah, and I don't know if she realized that. I don't know if anyone told her that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's very cool. That was the first royal visit since 1957, which was also, I think, kind of unexpected too.
Yeah, I did not realize that. And you were the one to cover it. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, dude, it was awesome. So yeah, so we take the ferry over, and again, the boat is full of passengers who have no clue.
Right, of course.
No clue. So we're all dressed very nicely at the front of the boat, and we're with DOT people who are kind of giving us the rundown a little bit. But, you had police boats next to us, which I think some people kind of saw. Jason, I know, was the first one to notice. I didn't notice at first. And he's like, oh, yeah, look over there. And then, go by the Statue of Liberty, and then there's a fireboat that's doing the waterworks.
Oh, I love that.
I love it, too.
Those are so fun.
I love it, too. So it's hilarious to me because there are people on the ferry boat. There's a lot of tourists,
just getting
too.
like a free show.
They were loving it.
Yeah, of course. They have no idea what's going on.
They had no clue.
Like, does this happen every day?
Yeah, so they're like, so you see, there's a lot of people who are just like taking videos, taking photos, having a grand time. And by the way, this entire day, it was awful weather. It was like, it was London weather. It was drizzle, dreary. But these people are out on like the deck. Again, it's the sandy ground, so we have the beautiful decks that you can look out, and they're having the time of their lives, not understanding who's above them in the pilot house. So we get off the boat. We wait for everyone to get off the boat. Then we get off the boat. We go right downstairs, and then she comes strolling off in the bottom. And then, I mean, it's crazy because, like, of course, she is a normal person, but like, is she really a normal person? You know what I mean? Like any other, like any other person, she just takes the lead and walks us over to the where the luncheon was being held, which was at the View at Battery Park, and you just have people passing her, and there's a group of us, no fanfare, nothing. It was the low profile, low key. And I want to say I saw one person who kind of did a double take. Because she's also...
I think I recognize you, but I'm not sure where.
She is the kind of person who, when you look at her, you're like...
You look important.
Yeah, I'm like, you're like, I can't place you, but I think I know you.
I know it was a luncheon to support the museum's campaign that we had talked about the Illuminating Future Generations. So can you tell us a little bit about what went on at the luncheon and kind of also just what the objectives of this campaign is, what the National Lighthouse Museum is trying to do?
Absolutely. So yeah, in the luncheon, she has a minute to herself. I believe she ate something and then comes out, and we had groups. I think there must have been between 100 and 125 people there. Again, I have no idea how the word did not get out about this. Yeah, so she comes out and she begins greeting everybody. Same thing that she did over in the National Lighthouse Museum, but now it's over here with a ton more people.
Still shaking hands?
Still shaking hands.
I would have just expected like a royal wave, you know?
I thought so too. I would
have been a little disappointed if I didn't get it, to be honest.
These people, these royals, you think that they're so, it's like unattainable, you know what I mean? And like, you can't approach them. And like, to be clear, there was protocol that we were eventually told by her security guards, who, by the way, were awesome, lovely to speak with, and very calm and non-aggressive, but in a way that you're like, oh, you will mess me up if I do anything. But yeah, no, so she, is walking around, shaking people's hands, asking them questions about themselves or whatever. And I'm just like standing there in awe that she has the capacity to do this with people she has never met before. But I guess it's the common love of something that brought them together. I did get to meet her, and I was not at all nervous.
Really?
Right up until...
Well, that's what I was gonna ask that question as well, because we are professionals, right? And
try to be.
But still, we'd be lying if we didn't get a little bit starstruck, or at least a little nervous when we see some of these big celebrities, right? So I was curious, kind of what that was like for you. If you were nervous leading up, if you were nervous in the moment. It sounds like you were okay, and then you weren't, or how was it?
I was okay. And because there was like the will I or won't I aspect of it. Because like I was like, I could meet her, I guess. And like Linda was like, we'll get you to meet her. And I was like, at the same time, like, I don't really know. And then it happened. And I was like, I was just in the UK in August. And I could have brought up any of that. My brain just froze. Thank God. I want to have a shout out to Peter Lissy. He's on the board of trustees. He was right there, made conversation kind of on my behalf and, whatever. But I will also say that Princess Anne is much taller than I thought she'd be.
Oh, really?
So she was in heels. I'm like 5'9", 5'10".
Yeah.
She was right up here with me.
Oh, wow.
So like, I also felt like a very small person just being in the presence of her.
Right. Yeah. But, you're just like scrunched over a little bit.
But it was, but she was lovely. Let me tell you, the softest gloves I've ever had the pleasure of like shaking somebody's hands with. Like,
I'm sure they cost like...
Oh, those were supple as hell. Like
$200,000.
Oh, it's amazing. But I mean, it's funny too, again, going back to the fact that there are these people who have this kind of power. It's the same thing of when the Staten Island, the old courthouse in Stapleton, when there was a film that came in the earlier part of this year. Brooke Shields was there, Brandon Ruth from Superman, like all these like big time actors come in to this dilapidated courthouse, and this film shoots here that producers decided to choose to film at. They might not understand this. That means so much to Staten Island because it helps put Staten Island in a positive light, that there are a lot of reasons to come here, but reasons to also like help conserve these things and revamp these things. I do wonder if Princess Anne realized how impactful her coming here would be, and her speech was fantastic.
Aids to navigation will remain important. The story that goes with lighthouses and how we got here is just as important. And your museum has made an astonishing impact in telling that story. But with the right partnerships that understand the value of what you can do, not just in telling a story, but for the local community and for education in all its forms, just to engage with young people, to get them to look slightly further afield, increase their perspective of the globe. This is a really good place to start.
She talked about why it's important for the younger generations to understand why lighthouses were so important. The campaign for illuminating future generations, it's all about raising funds for the National Museum, which I want to also throw in. When it was chosen to be the site was chosen to be the National Lighthouse Museum, they were chosen unanimously from sites in like New London, Connecticut, and Maine. Maine is so well known.
I was just going to say, that's where I would have assumed that it would be.
Yeah, so her accepting, not only the invitation, but honorary chair of this campaign to raise funds to enhance the museum for expansion and to really get the word out. Like, it was so important, and what a fantastic person to come to little old Staten Island, to this like museum that's trying its best, which will be a very great museum, which is a very great museum. It just was fantastic.
Another cool thing that I wanted to talk to you about was that, given that we had the exclusive on this story and people kind of all around the world seem to care about the royal family, I saw that the article got picked up by other major news outlets, not just in the US, but in other countries as well. So I was wondering what it's like to kind of be the first person to write a story that ends up being seen by millions of people all over the world. I mean, it's got to be a pretty cool feeling, I would imagine.
Yeah, that is, I can honestly say that's never happened to me before, ever. I've never been, because my beat, I will do breaking news, I will do crime. I'll do, honestly, anything that anyone asks me to do, because I like doing it so much. But my beat is arts and culture and whatever else. So, I'm never the first, minus that Staten Island courthouse story with Out of Order, the movie Out of Order. I'm never the first to break anything. So I thought in my head potentially that this could go big because, again, we're the exclusive. We knew that no one was going to be there. I didn't know how big. And then I was getting messages from my friends. All of my friends know I work, Staten Island Advance, SLive.com. I'm getting these messages from my friends being like, oh my God, did you see Princess Anne was on Staten Island and she rode the Staten Island ferry? And I was like, I was there. Yes.
I'm like, can you click the link? My friends do that all the time. They'll send me an article and be like, this is crazy. I'll be like, I wrote that article.
The thing is that they were sending me articles from other publications saying, did you know? And I was like, everything, if we're not on a story, but we normally credit back.
Right.
We normally credit back. Not everybody was was linking the SLive.com. So, we were the people who reported the speech of what she said. That's the only way that other people
can those quotes only exist because we put on the internet because we placed them there.
Exactly. So a lot of website, and there's a lot of websites, which again, I don't think it's really truly hit me fully.
I was going to say, toot your own horn a little bit. Where was it shared? What websites?
I've seen, it was USA Today. I've seen New York Post. I've seen Guardian. I think Independent Daily Mail from across the pond. And then we had, I think maybe Vogue or Variety. It's an honor, and it's so neat. I just if you ever... Where's my camera? Right there?
Yeah.
If you ever write a story and you're aggregating off of some other post, please make sure that you're link back to the original post so that person can get credit.
Yes.
That's important.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like we had the exclusive and then people I don't know, that's just something that, again, I've never really had to deal with. But yeah, but it was really cool. And actually it happened in my own family where my grandparents are big Yahoo News people. And my grandfather had texted me the link and was freaking out. And I was like, yeah, Poppy, if you click on the blue link, it's going to take you to my story, which is what they're writing off of.
Which is better. And also I can get the clicks.
Yeah, but it was cool. It would be cool if I could do stories like that again, meaningful, impactful stories. I mean, I don't think I'll ever meet a royal again, knock on wood. I never know.
But it's still cool to write a story that resonates on in this case, a global scale.
Yeah.
For us, it's usually cool if it resonates with the island and everybody's, or even the city and then this state. And now you're literally all across the globe with this story, which is so cool to me. But before we go, I was just hoping you could tell our listeners a little bit about what they can do to support the National Lighthouse Museum, whether that's some of the upcoming events that they have scheduled or where they can go just to donate money or to volunteer their time.
Yeah, I'll give you the website right now. It's lighthousemuseum.org. You can donate to this campaign. Again, it's a campaign for illuminating future generations. You can definitely, I'm sure that they're always looking for volunteers to get into the museum. Again, it's such a quick walk. It's adjacent to the Staten Island ferry. It's a 7-minute walk. Visit them. Admission is minimal. And basically just show the support. These are Staten Islanders or people with ties to Staten Island who are doing such a good job with something that otherwise would have been lost to time. It would have been redeveloped. So yeah, I mean, emailing them, but checking out lighthousemuseum.org is probably the most important. And I just also want to say that for as cool as it was getting kind of global recognition on this happening, when I got an email from Linda telling me like, good, that's the only person I cared about. You know what I mean? Because you never, when you write a story that's important like this, at least in my opinion or in my head, the first thought goes to the people you're writing it for.
Yeah, and you want to do it justice.
And you want to do a good job because, again, we were the only people who were there, so we're the only ones who could report it. Knowing that they were cool with it, that's when I was like, okay, this is cool. They're a great museum. They have a great future. Once we have Paul, the architect, who has plans. He's got them laid out. It's going to be a phenomenal space. They just need the community to continue to support them in any way. Going to their events, they have, I think the last boat ride is coming up later part of this month. They do have the soup contest, which was postponed.
I love a soup contest.
Who doesn't, you know? Especially like on a colder day in October. They have that coming up this month. That was postponed from earlier this month. I believe that's October 16th. They are a historical gem on Staten Island that deserves all the press. You know what I mean? Like in whatever we can do to help them achieve their goals. I think we should absolutely do it as a community and as a newspaper.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Lauren. You did a fantastic job on this story, and it is always a pleasure having you on the podcast, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Oh, hell yeah. Love it.
Thank you for listening to the Staten Island Advances from the Scene. If you like what you've heard, please make sure to rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and visit silive.com for the latest on all these stories and more. Thank you for supporting local journalism.